What's up, everybody? Jacob Daniel here. This is the Daniel 3 podcast. I'm back in my normal setup, and God, am I glad, because using my work laptop and my crappy mic was getting old. So I'm happy to be back using my regular setup. Got a green screen behind me that I'm hoping my cat decides to not be an asshole about and knock over like he did when I was testing it out the other night. So if that happens, I'm just going to roll with it and act like nothing happened. I'm excited to have two of my friends here tonight. So I'm not going to waste too much time. I'm just going to bring them on. First, bring up Jose Galison of the No Way Jose podcast. How you doing, Jose?
Doing all right, friends. I don't know. I didn't think we were putting labels on this. I'm just messing with you.
You can't put a label on the love that we have.
No, it's all good. Appreciate it.
And then we got James returning again from the Blackbird podcast. James, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. I was
how many times have I been on your show now?
Oh gosh, you might be the most, or you. I don't know, Jose's been on a couple times too. I don't know.
Okay, because you were just talking to that one guy, and I forgot his name. Forgive me. You said he was the first 3-time guest. I was like, I could have sworn I've been on 3 times, but that just might be like combined between our 2 shows because we do a lot.
Yeah, that was a Joe Hartman. I've had him on 3 times. But I think you've only been on my show twice, but we've done 4 podcasts together. And then I think me and Jose have done 3 or 4 between just different.
This is probably my second or third time on your show, and I feel like I've had you probably on twice. I don't know. I know I had you on a solo episode in the very early days. It's kind of funny that us 3 are here because like we were very involved in the early days of each other's podcasts. So yeah, that's kind of cool that we're kind of coming full circle and we're all big time now.
I don't know. Only one of us has gotten that Dave Smith boost so far. So
oh yeah, he doesn't talk to me anymore, so it's all good.
Dude, Dave like talks to me in like little spurts. It'll be like 1 week, it's like he's like talking to me like 2 or 3 days in a row, and then it's like 2 months complete radio silence. I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Do you want to just flex on us some more? Is that what you're doing here?
I know. I've never once received a DM from Dave, although he did buy me a beer once. So
well, my story with him is funny because actually, my start of my like we're not like close, but like we PM a little bit back and forth. It started because I actually took a shot at him like back in 2020. So it actually started out with us fighting, but then I apologized for being a dick, and then he was just like, "Ah, man, it's all cool." So.
Yeah, me and Top had a joke for a while. The best way to get Dave's attention is to call him a faggot. And shortly after he hit me up, but I don't think it was for that because it was totally joking. But
I called him a sissy crybaby. That's what I called him.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I like that better actually.
Oh, you know what? I did one time criticize him for having Nick Fuentes on the show, and he told me that. Yeah, he told me that it was that I was like.
Am I on the Fakertarians podcast? What the fuck just happened? No,
no, I think Nick Fuentes has nothing interesting to say. Like,
oh, okay.
I don't.
That's.
I mean, I don't know if he's a corny grifter or not, but like, the times he's been on Part of the Problem, like, have done nothing for me.
Yeah, I don't find interest other than the outrage. I don't find much interest.
Right, that's the thing. I mean, it's like you guys using the N-word. Like, why? It's just. There's no I will say
there are times when it's funny, and I will defend that to the death of me. But I'd say 9 times out of 10 it's not, if not even higher. So I understand the critique because we talked about this at Tom Woods 2000 a little bit. There are like I feel like if you're using it for shock value, like the thing about shock humor, like I have kids, so like they learn a naughty word or just something stupid like poop or fart, and it'll be funny like the first time just because of the ridiculousness of it. But then like the 20th time you're like, all right, this is really fucking old. Like, yeah, you're cute and you're saying, a bad word or fart, but it's like it's lost all its effect. It's the same idea with like something like the N-word but there are definitely occasions where it's funny. I like to think I've used it like maybe twice on Tower Gang, and I want to say it was well timed and it was good. I wish I could remember them. It was one of those like subverting expectations type things. I wasn't using it just to be offensive.
The N-word doesn't bother me, but I gotta tell you, I got really tired of White Woman Must Be Stopped just because it got so overdone. I was just like, and like I love Toad. I was like, dude.
And as a white woman, you were just.
And as a dude, I thought about putting my what was that, like, little gender change picture up just as a joke. Because I was what's funny is that I shared that in a group chat with my family, and my mom responded like, why is your sister with you? It's funny because like my sister's a radical leftist who like won't hang out with anyone who's not vaccinated. So
Oh my
she was
God.
like, and so yeah, but basically I look like a male version of my sister. So if anyone wanted to know what she looks like,
I mean, that's how genetics works. So
yeah,
makes sense.
so uh, James, I wanted to talk to you first a little bit. What is your experience like with your podcast? Because can I just say, like, if anyone watching my show right now, please go subscribe to James' show, because I feel like your show is like criminally like under subscribed to, especially on YouTube. So maybe you don't care about YouTube. I don't know,
I'm
but
not. I'm not really using YouTube. Like I don't even know if I'm going to be uploading the audio of it to YouTube anymore.
Oh, really?
I am uploading the video to Odyssey now though, but I'm putting it behind a paywall just because I don't know. It's a podcast. It's not a video show. Like I don't care if people are subscribed on YouTube. Although I could definitely use more subscribers and users. Just go to blackbirdpodcast.com. It's right there in my name.
That's better than you guys will love Adam. Earlier when I streamed with him, he put Adam Patrick and then Satan question mark in parentheses on his title.
It's possible.
So but yeah, what is your so what was your experience like starting the podcast? Why did you want to do it? And like how do you feel now? Because yeah, like Jose said earlier, like we all kind of started like roughly around the same time, and so like for me, it's been like kind of hardcore full time for like a little over a year now. So let's start with you. Like, what's your experience been like? How have you changed things? I know you kind of went through a little bit of a transition with your show as well. So maybe you want to explain that a little bit too in your answer.
Yeah, well, okay, so I went to the LP convention last year in Orlando, and I came back from it completely down on the LP. And so I decided, like, after Pete Quinones said that he was an agorist, I said, okay, well, I guess maybe that's what I am. And I started reading Konkin, and I was like, yeah, that seems about right. So I started this Urban Agorist podcast, and then I had Vin Armani on the show. And he wrote this article about this guy who interviewed him. He didn't use my name, but it was obviously me. He quoted me and everything, and called me an armchair agorist. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of am. Like, the gardening does not an agorist make. And then I realized that agorist praxis is great, but the philosophy isn't quite all there. You just have to look at Twitter to see that agorism, like a lot of kind of dogmatic ideologies, is, I don't know, it's not workable, I guess. It's utopian, I think. And Jose, you can probably come back with something, but
I disagree a little bit, obviously. But
yeah.
Well,
I think that I don't think that agorism is the way to bring down the state. But I don't know if bringing down the state is really what the goal is anyway. So I kind of moved away from agorism. I changed the name of the podcast to Blackbird because I really just wanted something to help me and my audience be more productive and successful. And I think that's probably it. Blackbird obviously was named after the Beatles song. And I think I've probably told this story on this show before, so I don't want to get too in depth.
I don't think you have, actually, because I think what's funny is I feel like I've meant to ask you about why you named it Blackbird, and I feel like I never have. I mean, I feel like it's part of that like spread your wings and learn to fly sort of thing is what you were going for, but
it's like to hear. There's so the Blackbird song, it's got like take these sunken eyes and learn to see, and take these broken wings and learn to fly. And so that's what we're kind of doing, is learning to fly and learning to see. I mean, how to perceive the world in ways that we might not have perceived it prior to now, and now being like this weird kind of era that we're entering into, or might just be on the down slope of. I don't really know where we're at. So that's where we are now. I've interviewed like all the big names except for Dave and Michael Malice, and so that's cool. But what I really get a lot of joy out of is interviewing people nobody in our communities have heard of. So like I've had a yoga instructor on, I've had a bunch of entrepreneurs, the other night I interviewed this Christian lady who struggles with mental illness. So we were talking about like faith and grace and overcoming that kind of thing.
You're the dumb Christian anarchist on.
I've had you on a bunch.
Yeah, I was trying to make a joke.
Did you say dumb?
I said you had that dumb Christian anarchist.
Oh, yeah, it's true. I've had him on before. I don't know. So that's kind of it. We're right now I'm kind of on an entrepreneur bent. So like every second or third episode or so is someone who's built a successful business or is some kind of, consultant or coach or whatever. Because I've kind of ideologically moved beyond agorism and LP and wealth, power, and influence and all that to where now I'm just kind of, I don't know. You interviewed Adam Patrick earlier. Did he mention the anarch kind of thing?
No.
Okay.
We had a much more like debate about religion versus libertarianism. So.
Oh well. So the anarch is it's sort of the conception of this guy named Ernst Junger. He wrote a novel that's, I guess it's more like the journal of this guy in a dystopian sci-fi future. Jose, I recommended it to you the other day.
Yep. I put it in my list to watch. I have a giant stack of books, but it's definitely one that really caught my interest.
It's phenomenal. It's probably the slowest book I've ever read. It's kind of like equal parts political philosophy and then just like observation and judging people. And this, so I mean, this guy is sort of a insider in the regime of the monarch or dictator or despot, however you want to categorize the guy, in this city state in the distant future. And he is like the nighttime bartender in his little salon. So he gets to hear all the conversations, including the drunken conversations that this guy has with his advisors and, other heads of state and things like that. And he's taken on this ideology called anarch. It's not anarchism. It's sort of the opposite of anarchism. It's kind of like, how like a monarchist is someone who believes in monarchy, but a monarch is the actual person who rules. An anarchist is someone who believes in anarchy. The anarch is the person who actually doesn't have a ruler. And
sounds like egoism.
Yeah, it is exactly like that. It's heavily influenced by Stirner. Nick, I think I'm getting to where I'm at the like third evolution, actually. If the LP is, the baby Pokemon and the agorist is like the intermediate, then I'm at the third one. And I'm sorry, I don't know the lingo of Pokemon because that's gay. But
well,
so that's where I feel like I'm at right now. Obviously, it doesn't have all the answers, but it certainly is a good way to kind of break down some of the kind of seemingly arbitrary qualms that I've had with statists and statism and that sort of thing. Holy jinkles.
So, Jose, what's your experience been like? I guess, like, from what you, and then like also like when you started your podcast, you also did it in the context of a group that we were all kind of a part of that, like, I'm kind of sad has sort of like not really been active anymore, but there was the Liberty Movement Facebook group, and you kind of started the podcast in that context, and then you didn't really have like a big change, but you kind of like dropped trying to attach it to that project and have started doing different things. So kind of go over like your journey from over a year ago to where you're at now.
I mean, when I started, like, it was an outlet of the group called the Liberty Movement. I think I do think it was a good idea. I think it was kind of founded in concepts that we're kind of see play out now, because I mean, we had a conglomerate of different concepts that went into that, but like I was, on the agro spend at that time, I wasn't impressed with the LP, and that's kind of why we started that Liberty Movement project. And like it was multifaceted, but the big thing for me is I wanted to make it like essentially like for people of a similar ilk to us to have like I wanted to make like a chapter thing, but not be political. just more like a group, kind of almost like what Freedom Cells was doing. And I knew Freedom Cells was doing at the time. We had a little bit of a different bent, but I also was kind of the idea that like the more people attacking this idea, this concept, the better it'll be. And so in my head, I guess I almost see it as like a failed venture, but I don't see it as failed because I see it as like more brain power attacking that, and you can kind of learn from that. And that's kind of what it seems to be. I haven't looked into, but the wealth, power, and influence. I forget what his thing is. Do you remember what his thing's called, James? You probably do. What Stapleton's thing? He's a network he's got going on.
Oh yeah, the people that move around. Nomad.
Yeah. So I mean, and so he's doing that, and so I do think it's like we kind of in a small way kind of dipped our toes in that, got people friendly to that idea, because I do like the idea of us creating that, because I'm still don't really see I don't see much of a purpose in political involvement. You guys all know that. I'm not saying there aren't benefits at all and there aren't things to be gained, but the biggest thing of it, the biggest thing people say is like, oh, it's a network. Oh, we get to meet people who have similar ideas. And it's like, it's kind of the same argument I know this is a Christian anarchist thing. That's one of the common arguments people make about the church. And I agree. There is definitely something to the community aspect. And that's where people come together on the libertarian side. And then, like, say for the atheist argument, people always like, oh, well, atheists, you guys don't have that like inbuilt community. And that's true. I mean, that's ironically what Satanism really is. It's just a bunch of edgy atheists mostly that are looking for some sort of community. And the only thing they have to unite against is their hate of religion. So they just make a mockery of it, which to me is silly. But at the same time, it's like, what we can do, have atheist bowling leagues? Like, I don't know. It's just weird, but that's kind of the idea that we were going with the liberty movement of, like, creating community, creating that. But yeah, so that kind of fell through-ish, and I started doing this. And I mean, when I first started, that was kind of what got the impetus to get me start doing podcasting. Because I never really necessarily had a desire to do it, but then I just had friends who were kind of like, they were also ones that were helping me, with we were kind of working together with the liberty movement thing. The group that we created, and they were the ones who were like, dude, you should do a podcast. And they're like, you would be good at it, like you should really do it. But I'm like a complete tech idiot. So did I lose you? Oh, it looked like we were lagging for a second. But yeah, I was a big tech idiot, so I was just kind of like, it's one of those, like, I'm very much the kind of person that I don't like change. And so it's like, you kind of got to force me to do it. And once I do it, I'm like, this ain't so bad. And I'm actually pretty good at it or whatever. And that's kind of how podcasting was for me. I kind of got like shoved out the door. And then I guess if anything, Liberty Move was almost an excuse for me to finally do it, because it was like I had an objective. But now I have no problem with saying I don't really have an objective. Like I kind of initially, when I started the show, it was the concept of the Liberty Movement was to be like a cultural, non-political thing. And so we had the YouTube channel. And so I would do that. And after a while, I kind of was like, well, I don't want to only talk about like cultural topics, because that gets old. I do want to talk about political stuff because that does interest me. And so I created my own channel. So I had my No Way Jose channel. And then I had like, because the YouTube channel, the Liberty Movement, was like a conglomerate of different people that fit that bill of like the non-culture or the cultural, non-political, whatever. Like we wanted a space that wasn't focused on politics. And so I would put my content up there that was non-political, and then on my stuff that was like didn't fit that bill, I'd put on my own channel. And then after a while, I was just like, I didn't really want to feel like I was tethered to do that. And it was just kind of like it also, the Liberty Movement kind of lost steam because we were very Facebook central, and Facebook was great for groups. I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Facebook completely crumbled. Well, not crumbled, but is basically a shell of what it used to be and faced a shitload of censorship. I think it was because of the fact that they made too good of a product for groups. And so it became useful for organizing. And so since we were so central on there, I think that was probably a decent reason of why they are so censorship heavy. Twitter doesn't have that. I mean, they have the group chats. And so there kind of is, but I feel like Facebook had a much better group concept. But anyways, so I eventually dropped that. And now I just, basically my show is I just talk about shit that interests me. And that's really all there is to it. There's not like any crazy objective. I don't have any idea that I'm saving the world. There's these groups out here called the anti-podcasters. And this is shit they say about us. Stuff like they say about us is ironically is all just complete straw man. Like I just do this because I find enjoyment out of it. I get to talk to people I find interesting. I have no crazy objective that I'm saving the world. I have my own opinions. I don't assert them to be true. And I just have fun. And I don't know, it's been cool as the show's gone bigger. I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm like big yet. I mean, it definitely ebbs and flows. The Dave bump was huge, and then it's kind of been petering off now, and I'm sure I'll get another bump at some point too. I have noticed. I don't know if you guys agree, because you guys, well, I don't know if James might not be the best one to talk to you about this, because he doesn't really push his YouTube content much. But I have noticed that like my YouTube views as of late have been going down, but my audio listens have been the same, if
Yeah.
not increasing,
What?
which
Yeah,
is weird.
I've had the
Like,
same thing. Like
yeah,
which I wanted to be only YouTube for a while, but
Yeah.
then there was a lot of people who were bugging me that were like, I don't use YouTube, which like
Mhm.
I've never used watch podcasts on anything but YouTube. So
Yeah,
I
well,
guess
for me, if a video is longer than like 8 minutes, I'm not gonna watch it. Like I don't watch long form YouTube. I don't think I like I'm a supporting listener or whatever. Like I'm in King Pild's $10 a month subscribe star thing, and I've never watched a complete episode of it. I just don't. I don't consume content like that. The only time I've ever seen or listened to an entire Joe Rogan is when like Malice or Dave Smith or somebody's on. I mean, if you host a 2-hour show, it's asking a lot for someone to sit in front of their computer or holding their phone or whatever.
Oh yeah, I guess it's like, so I pay for the YouTube Red, so I can just close my phone and listen to it. But then like if they're talking about something that has a video aspect to it, I
Mhm.
can pull it up and look at it. Or like I'll just put my phone on like my toolbox while I'm working, and so like I'll be working and glance over once in a while. There's something nice about seeing people's, especially during like the lockdowns and stuff. It was nice to like see
Hmm.
people talking and stuff, and
Well,
not
maybe,
hear it.
yeah. I mean, maybe you answered your own question then. I mean, maybe that's why people are switching more to audio, because they're going out and doing
Maybe.
stuff.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
think YouTube fuckery, honestly, but
Well, what's funny is that like is like with YouTube, it's like I have to generate videos to keep getting views. With the audio stuff, it's like there are weeks where I don't actually upload really anything to the audio because it lags behind the YouTube, but my views keep going up. So it's kind of weird. I also got a
Hmm.
big bump when I switched from, because I was using Anchor and then I switched to Red Circle, and I don't know what it is about Red Circle, but it's like 10 times better than Anchor. In terms of like somehow like they distribute to a couple things that Anchor didn't, and then like I don't know. Since then, I mean, I guess it's like there might be other factors. I'm sure there's other factors at play. Like you can't just like go, oh, it was just that one thing. Maybe I got better at maybe my content got better around the same time. I don't know. So, but at least that's what I've noticed. But yeah, it's interesting that Jose, you said you kind of seen the same thing, that the audio stuff's been doing better than the YouTube. 'Cause I've noticed that too.
yeah,
I'm
no,
seriously
it's definitely
considering
true.
switching to Red Circle.
Yeah, I'm on Red Circle, and I have no complaints, but that's the only thing I've ever used. So
It's a little harder to use than Anchor, but I prefer it because like Anchor is like tied to Spotify, and it's like I'd rather be with something a little bit not as big tech, which is kind of and so I don't know.
That's fair.
So someone had a comment here with a question. Let me find it again.
He wants to know if there's too many libertarian
Yeah.
podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought that's an interesting question. And there are definitely times when like one of my hesitancies, like I feel like probably all of us here probably had people telling us you should do a podcast. And for a while I was
Mhm.
resistant because this was my exact thing. I was like, there's already so many podcasts. I was like, does it really make sense to add one more? And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, like the reason I named my podcast what I did was because I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I need to not do what everyone else is doing. I want to like have my own niche and bring something unique, and not just be like, oh, I'm the 10,000th person to get up and say taxation is theft and criticize the military industrial complex
Yeah.
and be like, yeah, I mean, it's like we already have big names doing that. You do a great job of it. Me wasting my time to get on and do it wouldn't be that helpful. So that's kind of why I decided to focus more on the religious aspect, because it's more closer to home. And while there are some Christian anarchist podcasters out there, there's not as many, so it was a bit of a niche to fill. But even then, after a while, I was realizing like, okay, well now all I'm doing is talking to like people who already agree with me. So then I had to start talking about other things to try to get more of an audience and to get onto different shows to have more interesting conversations. But what do you guys think? Like, do you feel like there's too many podcasts? And and how do you guys deal with that? Like trying to put out a product that people want to consume, that's not just like repeating what everyone else in our circles is saying.
I mean, that's funny because it really seems like we all kind of did that. You know, we all had our niche that we started with and then kind of branched out.
Mhm.
I think luckily, me and James were smart enough to change our branding so we weren't pigeonholed. But it is what it is.
I did the opposite. I doubled down on my branding.
Yeah, which is what
you bought a green screen.
I had the same thought from the beginning when I chose my name. No Way Jose. I was like, I did that on purpose because I was like, I don't want to like niche down too much. Because did have the initial was like, I'm going to focus on cultural stuff. There was a part of me that was like, well, I mean, I'd want to keep it open branding wise. So I did luck up there, but yeah, no, I don't necessarily think there are too many podcasts, nor do I also think there aren't. I don't know. I guess I just kind of like, it's almost a moot question because it's like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, do it if you want to. Like, I mean, like, I don't know, but also, bear that in mind and have because I mean, we've been doing this all of us have been doing this about a year, and I mean, I mean, if you're in it for money, I mean, I've been doing this for a year and I make like $100-200 a month. So just for anyone who's like wanting to know what's going on that side of things, like everyone likes to make it out like we're some, corny grifters, that's a joke, but it's like, dude, I've been doing this for a year and I just in the past few months started making money. Like,
yeah, I don't make anything, but I haven't even tried to monetize it. I mean, I on Red Circle, it has that like exclusive subscriber thing, which like I clicked the button on, and I did go and create a Patreon account, but then I haven't actually like advertised it or put it out there yet. So I don't know. I've gone back and forth if I even want to monetize it. I mean, I'm not against
audio.
it. Like,
I would if I was you. I mean, if you can,
yeah,
if you have the option yet. It'll tell you when you have the option on there. So I don't know if you've gotten it yet. I just got that like a month or two ago, and even then, it's not like I make a lot. I think I make like $30 off the audio. At least last month I made like $30 off the audio.
Is that on Red Circle or Patreon?
Red Circle.
Red Circle, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Which but that was the other thing about like Anchor has like they have the option for advertisers, and I got that pretty early on, but they have one advertiser on Anchor. You can advertise for Anchor. I was just like that's I was like, okay, maybe, but like that's just I don't know. Like it doesn't really seem like a good business model. Whereas Red Circle, I heard better reviews for it as far as like they have more diverse sponsors and stuff you can click on. But I mean, some people have the criticism, which I don't agree with. Like, I don't think that you're a grifter if you're a podcaster and you go out there seeking money, because to me, it's like you're performing a service in the market and labor. And if people want to pay you, go ahead. I've been a little bit worried about it for my content just because of the religious aspect to it. And I don't know if like, I don't know, something about like mixing religious stuff into it makes it feel a little bit dirtier for me to take money.
Dude, you can get 501c3. You'll be fucking tax exempt. Just go for it, man.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's some Christian anarchists who say if you do that, you're putting the mark of the beast on yourself. But I mean, I don't know. That's just extra. I mean, like, something, I forget which one of you said it earlier. I think you were talking about it, James, like when you were criticizing agorism. I think my biggest complaint about like all of our, like, cause we're all kind of like, it's kind of weird. Like, so Jose's kind of like further on the agorism spectrum. I kind of started there, but then drifted more towards political stuff. And now I'm like pretty involved in the Mises caucus. And then James, I feel like you just like, it depends on what day. I feel like you just kind of like you wake up and you have like what were those things called like in school that the girls would have, where it'd be like you flip it and you just like
okay, that wasn't only girls. First of all, I don't know what the names of those are.
I don't know. What they are. I just feel like you do one of those and you're like, what am I today? Okay, I'm an agorist today.
Yeah, I mean, I sit on the board of the LP of Minnesota, so it's not like I can say I've completely abandoned the Libertarian Party. But like I've already told the Mises Caucus guys that I'm not going to run again next year. Like I might run for JC just because it feels fun to be a judge, but I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in the LP at this point, other than as a messaging organization. And even then, like, I mean, I would rather see the LP completely like go away and disband than
100%.
than see it as like the primary messaging arm of the libertarian movement. But if it's going to exist, I want it to be a like fucking badass messaging arm of the liberty movement.
And that's one of my biggest arguments in my head personally, because I know a lot of people like say with the Dave Smiths or all the good stuff going on with the Mises Caucus. I don't even necessarily deny, in a certain sense, they are a positive move. But my thing is like it puts the wind in the sails of a shit fucking vehicle that I want to be fucking blown up. I don't like if we like my thing is like if we could somehow magically guarantee we'd have perfect LPMC guys in there, and we could have like Dave Smith type messengers from here on in eternity in the LP, I'd be like, fuck yeah, like I'm wrong. Algorithm's stupid. But my thing is, I think it's going to naturally just revert back to what it was over time, just like it did with Rothbard back in the day. And I think, the Ron Pauls, the Dave Smiths, the people that we look to is like, look at these fucking awesome guys. And they are awesome guys. I think they put the wind in the sails. It creates this distorted idea of like a win. And we're like, oh, we got to win. But then you ignore the L that's like way outweighs the win. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a gambling thing almost.
No, it is a valid criticism, and it's something that like internally in the Mises Caucus, we already are having to fight because there's people that want to start capitulating to like our haters and the people that are criticizing us. Like,
Really?
yeah. Well, I hate to use I'm not going to use names, but I will call out the specific states, like the Mises Caucus in Texas. And like we all know LP Texas is awful,
God, yeah.
but like they're trying to capitulate with them and compromise, and we're just like, no, like you're not gonna like. And I don't know how many times state affiliates have to go through that lesson. It was like I thought people would have learned after New Hampshire, and then I thought people would have learned after Delaware. Even like Pennsylvania didn't make maybe as much headlines, but even Pennsylvania was a little bit of a sketchy stuff going on. There's by the way, to keep your eyes open, there's going to be probably some big news coming out of Pennsylvania here in the next couple weeks if things go the way I think they're going to go. But yeah, it's just like people are too. I feel like I don't know if part of this is I don't know if it's the incentives of politics or if it's just something psychologically about people who tend to be libertarian. But there's like something about like people getting into positions of power, but then they I feel like it's mostly the libertarian mindset where it's like they have such a low time preference for power that they would rather work with people and build coalitions and not fight, especially fight people that supposedly have the same ideology as them. So people get into like, oh, well, why do we have to fight people? And the problem is we've tried, and I mean, there are people, to be fair, there are people in the LP who aren't Mises Caucus who have sided with us and who are, I think, like good libertarians who just don't care to join a caucus and they don't need kicked out or dealt with or anything or whatever. But there's also a lot of people who call themselves libertarians in the party who are dishonest and corrupt. And, I think we've all seen that. And, I mean, I don't think that you can play nice with those people to get them out. It's almost like the same problem, like, like Quinones and a lot of the Praxian people started talking about, not really just with the LP, but like just in the broader context of just like political action or just trying to wake people up. It's like libertarians have this weird allergy to I don't know, like confronting people and not wanting to. I guess to them, it's like if they get aggressive, they feel like they're compromising on their principles, which personally I don't get. Like if you're being aggressive, but it's like in self defense against whether it's the state or it's dishonest people who have, broken contract and lied and committed fraud within the national party. I don't think it's a compromise of principles to be aggressive with those people. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it's something about like their mindset, or are there incentives in the political system that motivate that too? You think?
I don't know. To me, it all feels like LARPing, to be honest. Like it just feels like people getting mad for the sake of getting mad. Like I've designated this person as my enemy, so I'm gonna defend myself against him at all cost. I don't know. Like I don't have a whole lot of faith in that in politics in general, I guess at this point. Now, that being said, if someone's going after my friends, then I'm gonna go back at them. I mean, I don't know. Like I have a lot of sympathy for, or maybe not sympathy for, but I have a lot of friends in the Praxian movement, and I have a lot of friends in the Mises Caucus. I'd like to see them get along. I don't have any friends in the, wokertarians, for lack of a better term, movements. So like, what love do I have for them? I mean, other than my Christian love, Jacob.
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think it's probably like incentives thing as well, but I don't know. I don't really. It's one of the things I've said a lot is I do feel like the LP is kind of this like middling thing too. So there is something to like it as like libertarians, because I think it's like the LP to me, or even going the LP route, like while I am an agorist, like I guess I've said before I have like orders of preferences. Like now, say I had to like gun to my head, I had to do some sort of political involvement. The LP, like to me, like essentially if we're playing the power game, and I mean I know there's a messaging argument, it's kind of like they're kind of fucking useless, honestly. I mean in my head, but so like I'm a fan of like in my head, I like the next order of preference would be like a Hoppian thing, so like a localism. But even then, I kind of see more of an argument to like the paleo argument than the LP argument if we're talking power. I mean, messaging might be a little bit different, but I could definitely see far more good being done in that way of like a small group, kind of like almost like what Andrew's doing, like a GOP Mises, like where that's kind of influencing from the outside the larger fucking Republican base. And this is an idea I kind of got from the Emma Goldman's essay on like minorities and majorities and how they operate within each other. And I think that might be some like social phenomenon we kind of see in the LP. Like when they become a majority, the idea kind of gets watered down and bullshit. But if you're a minority, you're kind of what drives things. And so that's why I could see that maybe something like a paleo thing, like a small group, some sort of caucus that's all about purity or whatever on the outside and the fringes could really move things because they're like this isolated minority that affects the majority. But the problem is once any group becomes a majority, as we're seeing with the LPMC, they have a tendency to kind of water things down, become less revolutionary than they were. I mean, shit, you could probably make some sort of parallels between fucking like the USSR and like how that shit worked. When the fucking commies took over, and then like they were all hoorah anarchy, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, not so much now. Like there's something to that. I don't know. There's I mean, I'm not smart enough to put my finger on it exactly. I mean, I just read other shit and then kind of like extrapolate from there. But I do think that I really feel like someone should do some work on like incentives within like a political like parties and stuff like that, because it is definitely interesting. Like you're kind of like looking into how like social phenomenons work, how groups operate. Like I don't know, I think something about like it just being in the political realm kind of fuck shit up. And then even worse, like I feel like the LP is like in a sense anti-political, but they're trying to play a political game. So it's like there's some weird shit that happens there to where you don't really ever fully take on the advantages of being in the political realm. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So
Yeah, there's
I don't know.
something. Yeah, there, especially like I don't know. Like there's probably, I guess, less reservation about playing the political game in a certain way if you're doing it in the GOP versus if you do it in the LP.
Yeah, the GOP has a chance of winning, and so you're gonna have to compromise a little bit. The LP has zero chance of winning, so you can say whatever the hell you want.
I mean, I will say
it's that's the thing. I mean, like you've got these libertarians, big L libertarians, who insist on their ideological purity, and like Craig said here, the hope and the liberty movement in you can put it up on the screen if you want. The hope and the liberty movement in the GOP died when they shafted Ron Paul. Like, I mean, have you lived through the last year and a half? That the only chance of any semblance of freedom is absolutely crushing the Democratic Party. The Libertarian Party is never going to absolutely crush the Democratic Party. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
No, I agree, and so this is why I'm having Andrew on my show later in the month, because I mean at this point it's like, I mean we could debate strategy all night, but I don't want to get too much into that because I think at the end of the day like these camps are going to keep doing what they want because like they're acting their incentives. Like you're not going to roll it back. I had Quinones on my show and talked about this too because I was trying to say, listen, like yeah, like we can have reasonable disagreements, and like I'm not against having good faith talks about our disagreements, But if we just focus on fighting each other, then we're all like losing out. Like our energy is being wasted. I would rather form a coalition between the LPMC and then hopefully they take over the LP. So it's the LPMC acting within the LP with the GOP, and specifically like if we have guys like Andrew and Foe acting Foe acting in Florida, we guys Kaufman
Foe too.
and those
I mean, she's pretty great.
Yeah, Foe too. Yeah. And we have guys like, Kaufman and the Free State Project in New Hampshire, and they got a lot of good Liberty GOP people up there. And it's like, if, I kind of agree with you. And I think I said this, I don't know if it was your show or my show, James, but like one of our last conversations, you asked me about my thought on the Praxians. And I said, I used to buy into that cliche that like the left and the right are exactly the same. And it's like, you know what? That's really not true. Like you have to look at the current context. I do think in the past there were times where, like especially like early 2000s, where it seemed like the left was closer to libertarian leanings than the right was, because the right was so consumed with like and being duped by the neocons, and the left, while not perfect on economics, obviously, we're definitely pushing for more libertarian ideas.
Yeah.
But that was then, and this is now, and we have to look at the reality. And right now, and I say this as a former lefty. I mean, I voted for Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton in 20. I hope you guys don't quit my show now.
I don't think I knew you voted for Clinton. I knew you were a Bernie supporter.
Yeah. Well, I will say I did it reluctantly. Like,
I might have to
and
go,
this was
actually.
part of.
Just kidding.
Well, this was part of my red pilling thing, actually. Like, what woke me up to how evil the state was watching the DNC and like the corruption that went on there to like give it to Hillary instead of Bernie, and then how quickly everyone in the DNC, like the Bernie people, went from shitting on Hillary to like
Jose's armpits. Sorry.
They went from shitting on Hillary to like supporting her. And I did it kind of reluctantly out of like, I was younger and just kind of like doing what the people around me told me to do, but it never felt right. I was like, we just spent like this past like 6 months talking about like how awful she is and how she's a monster. And now you're just like, oh, well, Hillary, because Trump orange man bad. And it didn't sit right with me. So after that election, that I kind of started my movement away from the left. But anyway, so like as a former lefty, I hate to say this, but right now I really can't have any positive conversations with people on the left. Like they've completely gone off the deep end. And although I have some like internal prejudice and bias towards the right and the GOP, to be honest, like as much as like the MAGA stuff and like the Trump worship really like just triggers me and my autism, I have a lot more in common right now with like your average Trump supporter than your average Democrat. Like I hate to say it, but it's just true. Like one of my tool guys was like a huge Trump guy, like huge. But like over the last like year and a half of COVID, suddenly like he's really like he's even open. Like I told him I'm an anarchist, and I know like calling myself an anarchist to a right winger probably like 5 or 10 years ago would have been like met with a lot of like pearl clutching. But now it's just like, oh, I don't completely agree, but I see where you're coming from, because like they're seeing how fucked up this shit is. They saw like they believe that the election was stolen, and it's like and so they're a lot more red pillable now at the moment. And even if we can't get them all the way to where we are, like, don't we kind of have to band together to stop the insanity on the left if we don't want to all end up like in the gulag? I mean, I am I being dramatic, or I don't think so.
I don't really know how to answer that one. I mean, I don't. I think it's just be prepared for the shifting tides. Like, fucking. I mean, right now, I think the fertile ground for liberty is on the right. But yeah, I mean, if that changes 10 years from now to the left, just be on a swivel. Like, and that's the whole idea. Like, we kind of saw that with like the riots and shit, where like everyone got caught up in all the fucking George Floyd shit, and being like, fuck the cops. But as soon as things changed, like the problem was people had their heels dug in and just kept sticking with the narrative instead of shifting and be like, whoa, now it's not where I want it to be. So, and that's the same idea of the whole the left right thing. Everyone gets caught up and like, oh, the left, the right. Well, I mean, I think we can be a little reasonable and understand which side has more fertile ground for liberty right now. And right now that's the right. And I know someone out there might get all mad and shit, right and left. I know that's one of the biggest issues I want, not the biggest, but it's probably one of my biggest critiques of like Andrew's thing is the left right thing, because it's like, dude, that's so fucking subjective, and it's however you define it. There are so many goddamn
yeah. I
there's
agree.
so many different ways to define left and right. So it's like you're kind of coming in here like putting your foot through the door and going this is left and right, and it's like, okay, but you're using rhetoric that just assumes your position.
It's circular.
And then,
it's incompletely because like he says, well, the right is closer to us, and we're like, what about the neocons? Oh, well, they're not actually right wingers. It's like, well, you're just like you're conveniently making everything that's close to liberty right wing, and everything.
But he has his own definition of left and right, to be fair.
Yeah,
so that's
he does.
And also, to be fair, the neocons are no longer they've all gone to the Democratic Party. There's no neocons left in the conservative whatever movement or whatever. Now, so for me, I consider progressivism, which is like a subset of leftism, as the actual antithesis to liberty. So not all leftism is like far away from us. Some of it is actually, within us. Like, I love having leftists inside of me. No, I mean, progressivism, like Hillary Clinton, Woodrow Wilson,
seem like
etc.
passionate lovers, probably. So
I'm sure, they're passionate.
I need to kick this degeneracy off of my Covenant community.
Sorry, my bad.
I interrupted you.
Dan
done?
Crenshaw. I don't think Dan Crenshaw is a neocon. I mean, he's a warmonger, but he's not an ideological neocon.
I mean, I don't think he's an ideological neocon, but I think it's fair to label him as one.
Ben Shapiro's a little bit.
Ben Shapiro was the one that I was going to say too. He's pretty close, but
which sucks because like he didn't used to be as bad on it, but I'm a little biased because like he's the first one that introduced like at least like free market economics to me. And he is still good on that, and he is good on being against progressivism and the COVID lockdowns, and he's good on he was actually even good on free trade, but he's just like such a Zionist that it's like it's hard to
like the Dan Crenshaws and John McCain. I mean, and even like Dick Cheney. Those guys are not neocons. They're like nationalist interventionists, I guess. They believe in spreading the good news of Americanism, as opposed to Trump, who's a nationalist populist and doesn't want to evangelize America to the rest of the world. He wants the rest of the world to be as insular as he wants. I mean, you heard what he said about China and so on. Like he expects Xi Jinping to do what's best for the Chinese people. He doesn't want Xi to be doing what's best for the American people. That doesn't make any sense. It's Donald Trump's job to do what's best for the American people, right? Whereas like a Ben Shapiro or a Dan Crenshaw or a John McCain or a Dick Cheney, they want everybody to like kumbaya get along in sort of the United Nations, sort of way.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I the good test to find the good right wingers from the bad ones is to ask them their opinion on Lincoln, is what I found.
I do want to back up and reiterate. I will say that my thing with Andrew and his thing, and I do like Andrew live. I've talked to him a bunch. He's a great guy. I think a lot of people have everyone shits on Andrew and his ideas, and then they have them on their show, and then they usually have a great time and they get along.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you actually have some good points. But that's my biggest critique is his left-right thing. And my problem with that is that he actually has a coherent definition of left and right. The problem is that then he jumps from that to this is the definition of left and right. And the problem is there's like 20 definitions of left and right. So he just like assumes his point and moves on from there. And a lot of people do this as well. This is a very like an NRX thing I see a lot too. It's just like, and even a Hoppian thing where they assume the definition of left and right and then jump from there. And it's like, but it's really like, whoa, what do you mean? Because like, it's kind of what this whole like past 5 minutes we've been talking about here is we're like, well, is this left? Is that right? But it's ever shifting when you're talking about it in a political sense, in like a cultural, whatever, a socio-political culture sense. Like, yes, it's going to shift. But like, if you have say if you're doing like egalitarianism on one side, or whatever the fuck the other one is on the other side, or there's so many different ways. Konkin, he defined himself as a left anarchist because of the fact that he was defining left and right as like whether their willingness to use political power. It really just completely changes depending on how you define it. So then that's my problem is that, and I know it's annoying because it's you don't always have to start out and be like, well, let's define our terms. But if you're going to stick yourself so hard to one term, you can't really be upset when people misunderstand what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like there's room for misunderstanding there. So
yeah, I've kind of rejected the left-right paradigm. I mean, I said that like years ago, but actually, Reed said this is the first time I've heard Cheney was not a neocon. Reed you're much younger than I am. If you had been in the anti-war left 15 years ago, you would have heard that. He was certainly a nationalist, but not a neocon, like in the sense that neoconservatism is an actual ideology. It's not just anybody who advocates for war in the Middle East. It has a lot to do with Israel and Zionism and that sort of thing. So, I mean, obviously, Cheney and the entire Bush administration was steered by neoconservatism, but Cheney himself and John Bolton certainly are not neocons, strictly speaking. What were we talking about? I'm sorry, I got distracted by a chat.
I don't know. I did want to address one chat that's been under my skin for a while.
Okay,
if
good.
you don't mind, James, since you have a brain fart, anyways. So someone in the chat said y'all need a white pill, and I don't know about you, but I'm actually white pilled. That fucking like I'm so sick of that because white pill has become synonymous with you don't agree with my plan. Like,
or like you think the LP might be a little bit on the worthless side, so you're obviously black pilled because only an optimist. If you're optimistic, you think that the LP has a chance at making a difference in the world. I mean, maybe the LP doesn't have a chance of making a difference in the world, and realizing that is the white pill. I mean, then you're not going to be disappointed when they don't, because they don't like. Maybe a negligible one. Maybe the LP acts as the clearinghouse of the liberty movement. Like, I don't know. Here in Minnesota, we're going to pass an agorism plank to our LP. What's the thing called? Platform, which is kind of cool. Like, I mean, like formally recognizing black and gray markets in our platform is an olive branch, certainly to the agorists, but it's also a way of saying like, hey, you shade tree mechanic, or hey, guy who sells raw milk or whatever, you're welcome among us. You don't have to be alone in the world, or just whatever.
I mean, I will say, like, I know it definitely on like the state level and the federal level, the GOP has an advantage on the LP, but I mean, so I'm technically an elected libertarian now. It's not I know.
But you're in Pennsylvania. That's an outlier. Not many states are like Pennsylvania, where you have like a whole list of vacant races where you just run unopposed. And
well, there are other states that have similar laws that you can exploit. It's just nobody's done it like we have yet, like to the extent that we have. But other states are trying to talk to our people to kind of copy that model. But even then, like, it's not that hard to, like, there's even people that have, like, in Pennsylvania that won write-in campaigns and who are like small L libertarians and stuff. But to me, it's like I don't have a loyal, like, one thing I will say is I don't have a loyalty to party affiliation. It's like I don't have anything vested in the LP. Like, it's not a sacred cow to me, like it is to a lot of people in the LP. Like, I just don't. I think that it's just like, I kind of agree with you guys. Like, if I could press a red button and the LP disappeared completely from the face of the planet, I would probably want to hit that because it's a lot of work to take it over and then keep it good. But I just don't think that, like, we can actually eliminate it. So it's kind of like, that's not realistic.
The first step is stop supporting it.
No, but the problem is, like, we hadn't been supported it, and it existed, and it was run by retards. So
yeah, but there's always this rhetoric of, oh, we'll fix it. Oh, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And the problem is, like, we'll just maybe ignore it and ridicule it. So eventually it'll become useless.
Like, I wonder what happens after the takeover is successful. I mean, how many Mecox stay as on fire once they've achieved their goal?
Which is the Ron Paul effect too. I think it was Jared from Hoppian.org or whatever, that I think he said something that really kind of, how he put it. He put it, I think we were talking Tower Gang, and he said it was an artificial influx, almost like a boom and bust type thing with a Ron Paul or Dave Smith. Because you get all these quote unquote libertarians, but how many are really libertarians? Like it's almost like cool, you got people excited, but then what happens when the fervor dies down? Like how much of those were real? And then we also enter into the fallacy of like, oh well, look, all these libertarians were created. It's like, well, how many were really created, and how many were going to be libertarians one way or the other? Like, you know, the whole remnant concept, the idea that it's a nature versus nurture thing. It's kind of in your nature to think this way. Like I think in some regards, liberty people are kind of built differently. So there might be some remnant idea to that, to where it's like you are the kind of person who can be drawn in by these ideas, but in some people can't. So I don't know. There's definitely something to that, but I'm kind of droning on now. I think the vape's kicking in.
No, I mean it's a valid concern, and countered. So I mean, I don't know. I tend to think that I don't completely agree with you that ignoring it would make it go away. And I think the problem was, and the reason why, like, I think the Mises Caucus was formed and wanted to take it over was because it was like we were tired of seeing the philosophy and the ideas that we believe in being represented by really bad spokesmen. And that's unfortunately when people, a lot of people, I agree with you, are already naturally inclined or oriented towards us, or at least they're able to pick up on the bullshit that is the two parties that have all the power. But like the natural progression is to look at a third party, and if they're leaning more towards, you know, liberty than like, you know, like a Green Party or like, you know, being a socialist, they're gonna look at the Libertarian Party. So I just don't think that. I mean, like, yeah, it is going to be a lot of work, but I feel like, and I don't think that we're ever going to have even like half the population be libertarians. Like we're always going to be a minority, I believe, as far as like people who are really like ideologically and libertarian. And then out of that group, a lot of them are going to be ideological, but they're not going to be well read and be able to espouse the philosophy very well. So like there's always going to be a minority and then a minority within the minority.
Yeah,
But
well, this is the whole what I was kind of getting at with the whole Emmett Goldman thing earlier with the minority majority. We don't need everyone to be a libertarian. We just
No,
need a good minority of people, and we need people that will behave the incentives of it, which is, I mean, to flex on agorism a little bit. That's kind of, say, with like Bitcoin or like or fucking like Uber, shit like that. That kind of creates incentives to behave in a liberty-minded sense. So we don't need people to be libertarians. I genuinely don't give a fuck if anyone. I mean, I guess I do a little bit. But at the end of the day, all I care about is that you behave the incentives. I mean, I guess I actually don't really care at all. But I just think that makes you more likely. So,
and that's sort of Andrew's mission. I mean, he wants to incentivize people. You know, whether they're ideological libertarians or not doesn't matter. What matters is they vote for people who are ideological libertarians. And the way you do that is by buying their votes. And that's how every single politician in the world works.
Yeah. Which is, I will say, I've said before, wealth, power, and influence and like agorism are basically the same thing, just a kind of a different aesthetic to it. I know that's the one thing. The thing is, the lobbyists, and whether that's pure agorism or not, I kind of don't care. But at the same time, like I actually think it might be consistent. But even then, I think that's 100%. If you're gonna do it, lobbyists all the fucking way.
Well, yeah, what I didn't mean lobbyists. I meant the anti-tax. I don't know if you've heard about it. Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, the WPI route is agorism without the bring down the state ideology, which is why I kind of lean that direction more than I do towards agorism. The lobbyist thing is not a central point to WPI at all.
It's just the only place that even sort of advocate political involvement.
Well, you know and this anarch thing that I was talking about earlier. I mean, this guy is an anarchist who he refuses to protest, and he doesn't see it as like against his values to work in the inner circles of the monarch, because like everybody has their role. You know, I mean, most people do not want anarchy. Most people do not want to see the downfall of the state, and therefore you're always going to have a state. Like it's just a foregone conclusion. So do you want to just accept that fact of society, or do you want to continue fighting it and getting put on lists and getting thrown into gulags? You know, like
well, this is the kind of wealth, power, influence, and the agorism thing, or the nomad thing, or whatever. I agree with that, while also not agreeing with that. I like looking in a different way. I do think a state will always exist, but it doesn't mean you have to exist within it. It also doesn't determine what kind of state the state will be in. Like there's a whole lot of variations to that. And that's kind of where like agorism or like the nomad concept or or wealth, power, and influence is kind of like, and even that, even if you do exist within the state, how much influence does that state have on you? There's a whole lot of variances to this. Like, so that's why, like, I guess I kind of find a way to comport the wealth, power, and influence concept and agorism, because agorism is like, we're going to kill the state. I don't know if they'll ever necessarily kill the state in the same sense that you won't ever necessarily kill racism, because all that at its root the state is a belief. So I don't think it will ever truly get rid of it. And I think even Konkin kind of conceded that a little bit. But I do think it is a effective tool at creating spheres of liberty. And I think if you do magically, you do continually move that way, socially towards like an agorism type thing, I do think you will kind of change the form of the state. It will move different. This I actually kind of apply archetropism in here. His idea of like how power works. I do think what will happen likely is liberty expands. I think while authority, or whatever you want to call it, will contract, it will also become more concentrated. So it will seemingly be like worse. But I forgot my whole point. I had a point I was building to and I lost it. But yeah.
Well, I will say, so when I was saying we're not going to get a majority of people to be libertarian, obviously that's true, but all we need to do, and this is sort of like what the Praxians are talking about, and it's kind of a localism strategy, which the Mises Caucus talks about too. But like what we just need to do is get enough libertarians in different areas to lead their communities, and however you do it, I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. We kind of have to realize that probably every state and every county has its own set of circumstances, that the people there are going to know the best which route makes the most sense for them. I do like the anti-tax idea, and the idea of trying to incentivize people to act in ways that are more libertarian or vote for libertarians. I'm just a little bit more skeptical minded because I'm always sometimes I like Andrew a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm a part of his supporting listeners group. But
well, sure, and he's a devout Catholic. I mean, of course you like him.
Yeah, I know. I'm the reformed Christian with a Catholic fetish, I guess. I don't know.
You're the future Catholic with a Catholic fetish.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, sometimes I feel like sometimes Andrew and the Praxians overestimate the ability to which you can manipulate people. It's you can do that to a point, but then it's not always going to go perfectly. Sometimes you'll try to incentivize people and kind of act behind the scenes to get people to act a certain way. But then this is kind of part of why central planning fails, and why kind of a praxeological perspective where I'm coming from, where it's humans sometimes they are acting their incentives, but sometimes and very often their incentives aren't they're rational in a sense that they think that it's right for them, but it's not always going to be what you can predict. So you'll think, oh, I'm doing this and that's going to make these people do this, but that'll probably work, in some instances, but then in other ones, it's not going to be as successful as maybe they think it is. But it's I'm all for trying that idea, and where it works, and where it doesn't, you try something else. I don't think we ever solve this thing, but life's just a never ending series of dealing with the problems in front of you and just trying to make the best of it, I think. And I'm very anti-utopian in that sense. And I know it's kind of my autism is triggered when I say that, because I don't think anarchy is utopian in the sense that I view statism as more the utopian thinking, typically from a philosophical sense. But I do think some libertarians can be utopian in the sense that they think that we're going to have perfect Ancapistan from across the globe, and it's that's probably never going to happen. We'll be lucky if we have a small little sliver of land or an island somewhere that might be Ancapistan. The best we might be able to get across the world is minarchy, and maybe just to make things better to a certain point. But I don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. But my religious beliefs probably play a little bit there too, because I feel if you created Ancapistan, you would almost have heaven on earth. And that's not going to happen until it's supposed to happen.
I guess I don't even see Incapistan on Heaven and Earth. I think this is a kind of a concept I got from agorism a little bit, and that like one of the main concepts is you kind of got to start being more self-reliant. And I think an Ancapistan and a legit Ancapistan is not the Heaven on Earth people think it would be. I do think it would be better than what we have now, but it's gonna be one of those things where you're gonna have to get your hands dirty. Like it's not just gonna come easy. And that's part of like changing the culture. I think I do want to respond to somebody there. So there's no right way to liberty, many different paths. I hate this fucking talking point so much because it's like, yeah, no shit. Like, but there are better ways than others. And it's like, I mean, and I get it. Then people will be like, well, then this is the free market of ideas and we'll figure out which one works. It's like, okay, but like, when one, praxis gets mad at another praxis for voicing their opinion on the other one's bad praxis, it's like, well, okay, well, part of this free market of ideas is convincing. So like, this is them working through it. So I do get irritated with all the infighting with the different forms of praxis, if you will. It's like, if I'm going to argue with someone, I'm not going to talk about it because there's no point. Like, but if we're able to have a grown up conversation about it, cool. Because at the end of the day, we all are, I guess, in some sort of sense, I guess maybe like the Hoppians might disagree, and I might even like kind of disagree in some ways. We're kind of sort of all on the same team. And I want to convince, ideally, I want to convince you guys to my side, or I want to find out that I'm wrong. So, and the best way to do that is, this is kind of how to win friends and influence people. It's just how to interact with people. Like, I don't see any reason to be shitty with someone when, for example, I'm not even 100% sure the LPMC route's wrong. Like, I'm not 100% sure about anything. My thinking is that, there's going to be issues in the future, and I don't think necessarily it's the best way to go about it, but, I could be fucking wrong. I don't know. So it just gets, and I don't know. I talked about this with Dave when I had him on my show. We did Anatomy of State, and there was something that Rothbard touched on. That is that we don't really even know the proper praxis. Like Rothbard admitted it. Like he was just like, we don't like. Here are the facts. Now do with it what you will. He basically kind of was like, I don't really know the proper path, but here are the facts, and that's kind of where we're at. So there's no point in really causing issues. But at the same time, it is also like annoying talking points when people are like, oh, we just got the free market of ideas, or there's no one right way, and it's like, okay, but we can admit there are orders of preferences and certain things work better than others. I mean, like even if I'm saying the LPMC isn't the ideal route, that doesn't mean there aren't any merits to it at all. There could be positive benefits out of it. I mean, it could even be that the positives outweigh the negatives. It just might be that there's another path you could take that the positives more outweigh the negatives. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm not even saying necessarily what you guys are doing is bad. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. It could be a positive move, but it's just a matter of like, are there things you could do that are more positive moves? You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because what's that? I think Thomas Sowell said like there are no solutions, just trade-offs. So it's like there's always going to be a gain, but there's always going to be a loss, and that's because there's always an opportunity cost. There's always scarcity at play. So there's two extremes that annoy me, and like the things you're pointing out, which is like with the infighting and the different ideas. It's like on one hand, I get annoyed at the people that only do the infighting and that like seem like their guns are pointed more inwards than outwards most of the time. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the equal opposite, which is like people that are just like, let's never talk about our disagreements and let's just get along. And a little bit of like, and I like Craig. Craig's like on a lot of our different shows and comments, and he's a good guy.
Craig,
but the guy who made
Hargis.
No, this guy, the one who.
This Craig.
Comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this Craig. Yeah,
this Craig with a K. With a K.
Craig with a K. So,
but not a K.
Prince, just one name, you know.
But there's something about that too, where it's like when people just go, and I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes I'll just be like, oh well, I don't have to pick one. We'll just do all of them. And at the same time, it's like, but it is okay to talk about like. And like Jose, I've heard you talk about this on your show, and I agree with you when like you're like some people get triggered when you try to criticize them, and it's like, listen, I'm not criticizing you in bad faith, so like if I was, then yeah, you could just say, oh, you're being an asshole, I'm going to ignore you. But if the criticism's coming from good faith, then you should hear it out and have a reasonable conversation because like that's what it's what we're all trying to do. So we have to be, if we want people to listen to us, we kind of have to model also listening to each other. But I agree, like we're on the same team. That doesn't mean that you know, it's kind of like I guess like a good analogy might be like marriage. Like, you know, when you can't pick every fight with your partner because your marriage is going to suck. But if you guys just never talk about your problems, your marriage is also kind of going to suck.
The
So, like,
key
you
is
have
be
to.
physically superior, and then you win every fight.
The key is like.
I will tell you one. So I wrote a really long article and I never published it because it's kind of terrible. But if you look at the fruits of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and
God,
self-control.
it's already too long.
I know it is, but these are the Christian virtues. And if you want to find those concentrated in the liberty movement, you will find them in no better place than the Mises Caucus. And that is one thing that gives me kind of hope for that group. They're like the joyful warriors. And I've made so many friends being affiliated with the Mises Caucus that like I don't want to like abandon it. I talk shit about the LP all the time. And more on this show than even on my own, but I do have to point that out, that I've made more friends and
all my
found
homies are
more more joy and humor and just like positivity. And I don't know if it's like the Holy Spirit indwelling them or if it's just the fact that it's a bunch of goofy dudes, all dudes. But
as it should be.
Yeah. Sorry, Robin Dominic, we love you.
Except for James. No.
Yeah. Thanks. But like that is one good thing that is one thing that they're very good for. And I have a feeling that's why they continue to grow and continue to, you know, fund themselves and things like that, because they do exude that like just charisma, I guess. I mean, you know, the word charisma comes from like gift, the gift of the Spirit. Like those are that's where that word comes from. And even if, you know, you're a terrible speller like Michael Heiss, or like you're a grumpy asshole like David Hines, or like, you know, you're just who, like whatever it is, whether it's the leadership or the faces like Dave Smith, or just the rank and file people like you and me, Jacob, like these are some of the best people I've encountered in this movement. And Jose, no offense, but Agorist can't say that. Like yesterday, I got a message from someone who's been going back and forth for days with these Agorists, and you probably know who it is. And his question was like, "Are Jose and Adam Kokesh the only good Agorists? Like, why are these people so horrible to everybody?"
Dude,
the same goes for Hoppians. Like Hoppians are completely insufferable. Hans Hermann Hoppe is my absolute favorite libertarian philosopher, but the Hoppians, I can't stand even listening to them being interviewed because they're so dogmatic and so just like everybody who's not me is my enemy.
I think I might be the first person to be blocked by Jared twice.
I mean, did you deserve it? I have a pretty similar block. I mean, honestly, I look up to his blocking, how crazy he goes. I mean, he's a little bit excessive. I'll give him that. But I mean, he's right on the ball. Don't put up with people you don't want to on social media. There's no reason. You'll never meet the person.
I don't even know why. I've never got an explanation for either block. So I don't know what I did.
You're not entitled to one.
I know I'm not, but it's just like I actually like Jared when he's on podcasts and stuff, and I like Jared, like James said, like I kind of identify, like I'm not dogmatically a Hoppian, and this is maybe part of the problem. And I've talked about this on both of your shows. I feel like what unites us is that like none of us are really dogmatic. We're all a bit more, like we talk about, like a bit more agnostic, or I think it's just kind of like displaying basic humility to admit like we might be wrong, there might be something we're missing. But there's a lot of people in the movement, whether it's the Hoppians, whether it's people who are like 100% for agorism, or people who are 100% for the LP strategy, who just get like so intense and dogmatic about what they're doing. And it doesn't matter if even if it's in my camp, the people that are like 100% Mises Caucus or nothing, it pisses me off. And like I've sometimes caused drama within the LPMC because they'll be like, "We're doing this," and it's like, you're doing it because you're part of this group, and I'm like, no, fuck you, I'm an anarchist. Like, you you can't tell me what to do, and I'm not going to just like do it because I'm part of your group. Like, that's retarded. I'm an individual. I can, like, if I think you're wrong, I'm going to tell you that you're wrong, and I'm not going to do what you say to do. Which, maybe I'm picking. I've picked some fights before that didn't need to be fought. So but that's different. But it's like I really hate dogmatism. I hate it in the church. I hate it in the liberty movement. And I don't know how to deal with people when they're like that. Like, that's who, like, I block people probably only when they are that level of dogmatic. And like, that's my biggest criticism of Andrew sometimes. Like, and I like Andrew a lot, but sometimes he'll kind of have that like a little bit of dogmatic energy about like the right wingers, and it's just like I don't know, I don't like it. I'm very hesitant to be like 100% sold on anything. I don't know, what are your guys' experiences with that?
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I put out a tweet the other day that was like, the agorism's worst enemy is agorists, and it's 100% true. Like I had Jared on my show, and we kind of talked about it because the Hoppians are known for not liking agorists, and I think it's probably from a few things. I think the simple fact that Konkin labeled himself as a left libertarian, I think it's kind of one of those things where I always make this joke that, like, if you had a kid growing up your whole life and you called them a homo, like, I'm not saying that would make him a homo, but it'd probably increase the chances. I don't know. It's kind of like, or if you call them a thief or an idiot or whatever, like, you're kind of to some extent implanting that thought in their mind, and it makes them more likely to do it. I think there's something to that. Like, you have that side of things with it being the left, and then also kind of draws in the left as well, because people are like, oh, this is a left libertarian idea. So you have a lot of people being pulled from the left, and when I say left, I mean how Hoppians or the NRX define the left, or more the egalitarian side of things or whatever.
I was about to say, like, which version of the left are they?
Yeah, right. So it'd be more the egalitarian one. So this is where you get a lot of commies and socialists kind of, I think, stream into the agorist bent. And also, I think one of my biggest criticisms, and I don't even remember if Konkin ever actually made this one, is that they use the moral argument against politics, which I don't think I can never. I've tried to wrap my head around the moral argument of how it's immoral to utilize the political process at all, and I cannot wrap my head around it. Maybe it's because I'm at my core an egoist, and to me, morals are all just a dumb spook. But like, I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around a consistent moral philosophy that would make it so that, like say a self-defense. Because, like, I don't know, one way to put it would be like, if I took a fucking gun and put it to your wife's head and then some stranger, and I was like, pick one. Like, if anything, I think it'd be immoral not to pick your wife. But that at its core is kind of what voting is. So, like, because voting is a classic example of like, what people use and be like, oh, it's immoral to utilize political power in any way. And I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around that. I that's why I always make the argument that it's like, it's just like, I come from it's not useful. Like, and it's also not as simple as just like, it's not really, I know everyone's like, the self-defense argument. My argument would be like, well, really, if you want to do self-defense, you would just not vote. People get tricked into the idea that I have to vote to be in my best interest or whatever, So I don't know. That's for me. It is irritating how some they do get dogmatic. I don't know. And I also equate it to a lot like the atheists, like, because I always equate it to like angry atheists. Because whenever you first become an atheist, there's this period of time where you're like, I know the truth, and you're like fucking annoying.
There's this one guy that's like in all of our like live streams, like Reardon or something, and I don't even know why. Like, he's one of those like angry atheist types, and he'll come onto like most of my live streams and start spouting off about like all the like cliche like atheist arguments about like, well, this in the Bible God did and it was evil, and this, and it's just like, dude, like, I
had somebody on my show who did that.
Yeah, I was like, dude, like. Now, like, with your show, it's like at least with your show, it's like you're not explicitly religious. I'm like, dude, like, what part of biblical anarchy was confusing to you? Like, what did you show up expecting from this stream? Then you're going to come in here, and so it's like, I don't get it. Well, it's like, but to be fair, like, there are some Christians who do that too, and that's been part of my criticism of some of the Praxians, is how much they'll be like, the angry Christians. It's just like, oh, libertarianism has an atheist problem, and it's like, this was part of my conversation with Adam earlier, which that's going to drop tomorrow, which was just like, I mean, like,
Good.
I'm very religious, but I don't think I think it's like peak autism to go around and like be like, everyone needs to stop talking about libertarianism and we need to make everyone Christian. It's like, oh, cool. No Christian in history has ever had that idea. We've never tried that before. Like,
yeah, that's my biggest that's probably my biggest concern of the practicing side of things is the focus on religion. And I'm not even saying this to be like a cringe atheist. I actually see a lot of value in it, but I think there needs to be a clear-headed way of looking at it. Like I call it religious maximalism. Like I'm perfectly of the opinion that you should be able to like. I think it's actually great to foster, Christianity, like those types of cultures, because I do think those are cultures in which libertarians can thrive. But at the same time, to have this like maximalism idea of it, it's just kind of pointless. Which I forget. I wanted to tie into something, but this kind of works into multiple things. It's been one thought I've been thinking about lately is I find the do not comply shit. I find that to be a little bit dogmatic lately. I don't know if you guys agree, because we were talking about people heckling you in your live chat type thing. And I think it might have been a Reardon guy. I don't know. But I got shit because I've been kind of, as of late here and there, I honestly find it kind of dumb that don't comply no matter what idea. Because it's like, and I get it that this is a very important issue, but I also at the same time, it's like, say, for example, you're in a situation, because everyone's situation different. I think if you can not comply, you probably shouldn't comply. But I also am of the opinion that like some people, maybe you should, just in the same idea that, maybe you shouldn't be like, you know what, I'm not paying taxes here because fuck the government. Like you might ruin your entire life. like why do that? I don't know. It's almost coming off as dogmatic as of late. I don't know if you guys agree, because like I put out a tweet a while ago that the you're just getting the Pope to fucking feed your wife and kid or feed your kids is become the libertarian equivalent of they just want to get a haircut. Which is like, and it's kind of true. Like, but the weird thing is though, it's like when they say, "Oh, you just want to get a haircut," you're like, "Well, that's ridiculous." When you say you just want to feed your kids, like, yeah. Well, it's kind of a big deal, and I get it. Like, this can cause issues with liberty, but to apply a HOPA, it's a time preference thing. Like, some people have high time preferences for a reason, because their current needs outweigh their future projected needs.
Right.
Like, I want liberty in the future, but if I'm in a situation where my current needs outweigh this theoretical future possibility, I'm sorry. Like, it's just how it works. And I don't know if you guys agree. I know a lot of people get ass mad about that when I brought it up, but it's like, and I'm not even saying people should comply. I think if you cannot do it, you should. Just like that's that root what agorism is. When you cannot comply, don't comply. Like, that's all that agorism is. But we're agorists aren't this like straw man. I guess maybe some of them are, because some of them are pretty idiotic, as we've said earlier. But in my head, the way I see agorism is not this like, I'm going to go live in the woods. I'm going to, fucking grow my own potatoes and I'm going to sell eggs or whatever. Like, no, it's just it's individual for each person. You push the boundaries as far as you possibly can. And this is why I wanted to get at some point with the whole VIN thing. I actually think that's a great example of the shitty aspects of agorism and the people within it, because I don't like one of the main concepts I got from agorism was I started seeing things more along a spectrum. And the idea of that, like, hey, no one's saying you have to go completely off the state whatsoever. You're going to not comply with anything. It's more like you do what you can. And so for someone to be like, oh, you're an armchair agorist, it's like, well, you're kind of defeating the point of agorism in some sense, because the idea is to encourage you to continue to going down that route. And also there's not necessarily, it's completely subjective at what point is your stopping point for where you no longer feel comfortable. When does the cost outweigh the benefit or whatever? So like, to call someone an armchair agorist, like, well, you don't know the fuck they're doing. And also it's like they could just be getting into it. They're testing their boundaries. Like, I don't know. I think all these things kind of tie together.
Well, to be fair, if you're just testing the waters and seeing what they're doing, you shouldn't be starting a podcast with the brand agorist. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I still think that was a wrong way to look at it. I think he's actually entirely wrong to be accusing people of being armchair agorists, because that's my whole point. Is I don't think there's any. It's completely subjective. It's not like the whole idea of agorism in my mind, and Konkin went on about it too, is that it's not an all or nothing. You weigh your subjective costs and benefits. And so like you do what you
Yeah.
can. So
So this comment goes along with you, Jose, and I'm gonna like one up your controversial take. So the comment, just for the audio version, I'll read it. The do not comply thing is a pseudo reactionary action by people opposed to the regime. It's the fallacy of doing the opposite of the regime all the time. He's saying like instead just take the logical position all the time.
I like that. Yeah.
So I like that too. And so I'm very like skeptical of the COVID vaccine for a myriad of reasons. But I've also seen enough people get it and not have anything bad happen to them that I kind of also reject some of like the really like out there fear mongering about it. I don't think it makes sense for me to get, but I kind of like, in hindsight being 2020, kind of wish my dad would have gotten it, because my dad has a lot of health
Yeah.
issues, and he probably could have prevented it. At least he probably still would have gotten it, but maybe he could have like not been hospitalized and had it get as bad as he did if he had gotten it. And I can even say, listen, the vaccine poses a risk. Like there might be side effects down the road, but my dad's already older and he already has lots of health issues. So like in that position, I think subjectively, like it would have been like the vaccine would have been a better risk than going without it. And there's a lot of people, especially in those risk groups, where I think that's the right calculation. So you can be like, axiomatically against the mandate and like feel like I don't want to get the vaccine because I don't want to comply. But it's like, for your own personal health, if it makes sense to do it, people shouldn't shame you for doing it if you feel like that's the best bet for you personally.
Yeah.
To be fair to the non-dude. Oh, so go ahead. Go ahead.
We spent all of 2020 telling people like, oh, we have the right to weigh our risks. Like that was the entire argument of the libertarian position on lockdowns, was like give people the ability to weigh their risks. If they want to go out and risk getting this virus, then they can go to church and they can go to restaurants and they can go to concerts and so on and so forth. And if they want to stay home, let them stay home. Same with the vaccine. It feels like libertarians have this blind spot that because the progressives are so in favor of the vax, that not only should they oppose the mandates, but they should oppose the vaccine itself. And like,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Like, I got the vaccine. I'm obese. Like, I'm a fat ass, and yeah, I could have spent. I could have spent. I know exactly. I'm probably HIV positive for all we know. I mean, I could have spent all of 2020 losing weight, but I didn't. So what? So I didn't do that. I need to do the next right thing, and the next right thing for me was to get the vaccine, because at the time, that every shred of evidence, whether it was coming from the CDC or coming from the right-wing media or whatever, was that this vaccine is effective. And I've never been anti-vax. I don't really believe the if you get any vaccines, you're gonna have autism and whatever else.
I already have autism, so I mean,
yeah, I mean, we're libertarians. No, I'm just kidding.
I wish vaccines caused autism, because then I would be mandatory vaccinations, make everyone autistic, libertarian utopia ushered in.
Jacob, are you actually on the spectrum? Like, do you have autism?
I can't. So I haven't gotten tested for it, but I'm like 99% sure I am. Like, I got tested for ADHD, and I've taken self-evaluations for autism, and ADHD and autism are very like correlated with each other. So I mean, maybe milder than some, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm on there.
Okay. Yeah, I took a self-evaluation. I got a 10, and the person who told me to take it got a 24, which like I think over 20 was sort of like the on the spectrum result, which tells me I guess I'm not on the spectrum, which is probably good. Like I have enough issues. I think I
took that same test, and I don't think I was over that limit, but I was like right up against it. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably like mildly on there. Not again, like, maybe not as high as some people, but probably a little bit on there. But I don't know. I mean, it's all like a lot of those tests and stuff. I always wonder how like it doesn't really feel like hard science to me. A lot of it's very subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and a lot of it's propaganda based, which is reason for skepticism, obviously. And come to find out, like the vaccine isn't all that effective, especially at spreading the virus, which is
right. That's my biggest problem with it. Is even like I'm not afraid of it killing me. I'm not afraid of the side effects. I just think if I have to keep getting it every 6 months, and the biggest benefit that I can like maybe charitably give it is that if I get it, my symptoms would be slightly less. That's really not enough of incentive for me to get it unless I was in a high risk group. Then I would be I'll get it because like I need every little bit I can.
And my fat ass likes food too much to lose my sense of taste. So
I do want to be perfectly clear, and I'm not even necessarily saying you guys are saying this, but I do think a lot of the do not comply folks, they wouldn't really classify this discussion within that, because they're most of them are seeing that as like do not comply in the aspect of like if you are being forced to by your job or something. If you decide to take that personal risk, I would say, to be fair to most people I've talked to, they would say like, oh, if you feel like you need it for that reason or whatever, sure. But if you don't need it and you're being like kowtowed into it by your job or whatever, that's when they're like, don't fucking do it. And that's what I was talking about earlier. But there is definitely some people have been a little crazy with the vax stuff. Although I don't feel like I've seen too much of it. I guess some people go
Not
crazy.
too much, a little bit. But I also think like here's the other thing. I told my wife, like, if I ever got the vaccine, I wouldn't I wouldn't. So unless I needed to. So like when you were talking about like feeding your kids, I've thought about getting it because I was like, man, what if we need to like travel in an emergency and like that was like a restriction to be able to travel? Like that would fucking suck. But if it wasn't an emergency and if I got vaccinated, I almost would still not comply with like the mandates or anything. Or like, oh, I could do this if I show the card. I'd still be like, no, F you. Like it's none of your damn business. So you can get the vaccine and still not comply with the authoritarian part of the regime. So
here in Minneapolis, we don't have a citywide mandate, but like most of the concert venues and stuff are asking for proof. And I'm not showing it. I've gotten refunds on concert tickets and stuff like that.
Yeah. Good for you.
I'm not willing to go that far. As far as I'm concerned, it's a personal medical document, and I don't want to contribute to that like cultural phenomenon, I guess. And I mean the big comedy club here is not, they're super like do what you want, and all the karaoke bars, which is really what I care about, they're fine and nobody's wearing masks and stuff. Like it's pretty great. Like Minneapolis is an awesome city to live in if you need to live in a big city. Because like everybody's pretty rational about it, except for these stupid concert venues and theater venues and stuff. And I've had to give up tickets that I really wanted to go to, but anyway.
Yeah. I like this comment. I think I put it up there because I agree that that's the other problem with like the whole COVID regime and also the woke stuff is people make it like their entire identity and everything you talk about is just that one thing. So we're coming up here to the end here. There's one topic I wanted to get to a little bit. Maybe we can just briefly touch it here at the end. The other interesting thing between the three of us is that Jose's an atheist. I'm like pretty hardcore religious. And James, you're, Catholic, but then you also
it's that fortune teller thing again.
Yeah, you mix in a little bit of like postmodernism and sort of like a weird view on morality that I guess is not. I'm not saying it's incompatible with Christianity, but it's not like maybe the typical Orthodox, mixture of different things. And of course, like I don't care because I'm not really dogmatic about any of this, but I find that interesting that we're there's like a spectrum from like Jose, like you're like in the middle, James, sort of like literally and also like kind of metaphorically, because like and I'm probably the most adverse to some of the like. I mean, I can find value in egoism and value in postmodernism, but I'm probably more against it than the two of you are. So I mean, Jose, you and I have talked a lot about like the Stirner and postmodernism stuff. So maybe like you first explain like where you think the value in it is and connecting it to like the philosophy. And then James, I want to get you to talk about the value in that stuff and like where you connect it to like your views and like maybe where that ties into your religious views too.
Egoism. Okay, like so I don't have much to say about postmodernism. James probably have to say more of that. That's one dive I do need to take, but I have like heard some concepts of it and I always find it friendly, but I don't want to put off any idea that I'm a postmodernist or anything like, or even necessarily know what that means entirely.
Sure.
Like it's so fucking vague. Even when I've heard, I don't know how many podcasts have listed postmodernism and I still can't give you a good definition of what it is, but it just kind of seems to be a different way of thinking, which seems very similar to like the Stirner stuff and shit like that. But yeah, I definitely don't want to put on any air to anyone. I'm some sort of postmodernist. I haven't read a single postmodern book. I want to eventually, but I have so many other fucking books to get to. But egoism, I don't know. I like it because it's for being an atheist. And honestly, I find it to be a good way to undergird principles in general. Like because I'm essentially the way I see it. I know a lot of people associate egoism with like communism, and it is kind of in some ways, but it's not. It's really it's more of it's kind of it undergirds your political philosophy in a sense. It's almost in moral philosophy in a weird way. I don't even know how to describe it entirely because it doesn't even believe in morality necessarily. It's essentially Ayn Rand's concept that everyone gets asked mad about like rational self-interest. It's that applied consistently, unlike Ayn Rand. So like it is essentially just that which is in when your interest is essentially, for those who don't understand it, it really is just it sounds bad, but it is a kind of a philosophy of selfishness. And that's kind of where it starts from. But it sounds ridiculous, but just like how Ayn Rand would put it, like, okay, like it does. Yeah, people are like, oh, well, you can just go around and do whatever you want, not even care about anyone else in the world. But it's like, yeah, but that's not in your rational self-interest. Now, is it? Like, you have to interact with other people. I don't know. I just like it to undergird it. I feel like it makes it a lot easier. Like I undergird it to my fucking like ANCAP stuff because I like the NAP stuff like that. But I like the NAP because I see it as being to my benefit, and which is because what is to my benefit is what is to the benefit of society, in my opinion. So, and I think that the NAP is a good way for society a good rule of thumb for society to live by. And if I want to uphold those values, or if I want people to uphold those values, the best way to do it, the only way I really have to do it as an individual is to, essentially live those values and hope that people follow suit. So, yeah, I know it's a little bit roundabout, but, go ahead.
There's like a compatibility there between egoism and like human action, because it's like egoism is almost like, it's like, because sometimes like we've characterized it as like might makes right, which like some libertarians don't like that. But at the same time, it's sort of like, well, like if you don't do anything, if you don't take human action on the things you believe in, then they don't really exist in any meaningful way. Like if they only exist in your head, then what's the point? It's kind of stupid.
I always use the egoism, like, because I know people get caught up on the might makes right thing, and Stirner has a whole bit where he's talking about rights, and he has like what he calls, I think he calls them egoist rights. And then so you have like egoist rights, and you have like what are like normally like natural rights is what we'd usually use them as ANCAPs, and the or whatever.
These are fighting words.
But the way I always explain the way he describes rights is it's more of it's the is-ought thing, because I mean, I know a lot of people get caught up with like Hoppe and how you can make it an is and cross the is-ought divide. I'm not entirely sold on that. But I mean, with argumentation ethics but anyways, it's a whole other thing. Basically, the way like natural rights are is what ought to be. Like this is what ought to be. And when Stirner's describing his egoist rights, like might makes right, that is what is. So like you may not like it, but in the day, like if I go fucking kill my neighbor and take their property, if no one does anything about it, what use is, oh, well, that's against natural rights? It's of no use whatsoever. You're just, I mean, if the community we're in doesn't care, or we don't even have a community, it means nothing. So it is, when he says like might makes right, or he's describing egoist rights, he's describing what is.
It's like saying I'm not a witch while you're getting burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials. It's just like, okay, well, they thought you were and they burned you down. So
yeah.
So
that's, I know people get caught up on that, but it is a useful way to look at things, and like this is what is, and then this is what ought to be. So, but yeah, I don't know. I've done a whole, for those interested, I've done a whole episode with Magnus Benvidia. We covered the Stirner. This was part of my Anarchist Handbook series. So that was the first one I did. I did the first one with Magnus, and I think the second one was with Dave over Rothbard. But yeah.
Those were definitely, check both those episodes out if you haven't yet. James, your little bit, and then I'll close this up.
Yeah, I don't consider myself a postmodernist, really. I think I did for a while until my fortune teller told me that I wasn't one. No, I'm just kidding. No, how to describe this? So for me, like postmodernism is an era, not really an ideology. It's like sense. Foucault and Derrida and their successors and predecessors were more describing the is rather than the ought. To get back to that
way to put it.
And that's kind of why earlier I said, we're either entering an era or we're on the down slope of an era. We're either exiting the postmodern era or we're like finally getting into the like right at the right
integral
into
theory you're dropping on us.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think that the postmodernists had a lot to say that were good things along the lines of, like, there's infinite ways to look at anything, to perceive anything. I definitely agree with that. But then, back to what Jose was saying earlier about, like, the many paths to liberty. Like, there are more and less useful ways to look at things.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one thing that I've kind of evolved on in the last year or so. I still see morality as something that is more aesthetic than objective. So that's definitely something that I would kind of disagree with, like, Orthodox Christians on. But there again, like, there are certain moral values, like, don't kill, don't molest kids, don't steal from people, that it makes for a well-run society. And so when you allow these things, then your society breaks down. Don't counterfeit the money, for instance. Like, don't be debasing your gold.
Yeah.
So I hate to call myself, like, utilitarian either, though. So I mean,
it's a bad taste to it, doesn't it?
I know it does. I first heard about Sterner and egoism from someone in Thad Russell's internal Facebook group, and I have always kind of been really sympathetic to rational egoism. I'm not sympathetic to Ayn Rand. I think she was terrible, but Sterner is pretty
version of it.
yeah, exactly. Well, Ayn Rand was a shitty version of everything. That's the reason.
Yes.
Like, so Ayn Rand ideologically and the atomic bomb praxeologically, is that right? Like, the praxis of modernism is what ushered in the postmodern era. Like, the atom bomb was when scientists stopped asking, why are we doing this? And they only took into account that we have the ability to do this. They stopped looking at the morality of what they were doing. And Ayn Rand took this like beautiful free market place of ideas and, like, the free speech and all this stuff, and she made it like an absurd caricature of it. So I think that they both were, that these two things kind of interchangeably, or intertwined, brought in the postmodern era. The modern era came to an end because of these, like, absurd, deadly, dogmatic, cultish things. So that's kind of why I've sympathized with postmodernism as an ism. But like I said, I see it way more as an era than a philosophy at this point in my sort of journey, I guess. So yeah, that's where I'm at on morals. I happily say that I grew up Catholic and that I am not like an apostate Catholic who hates the church. I think that the Catholic faith is the fullest, purest, most beautiful, and goodest. I don't want to say best. I mean, like, the fullness of goodness.
Yeah.
In not just Christian faith, but religious faith. Although, orthodoxy is also very nice, I guess.
Yeah, there's something, it's weird because I have a lot of theological and philosophical disagreements with Catholicism and Orthodoxy, but there's something enticing and beautiful about them that, like, I'm drawn towards. So it's a bit of a love-hate relationship for me. But yeah, I think there's something there, and it's like, I've tried to reconcile the, like, I don't know, like, cut the baby in half, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
With, like, the objective versus subjective morality, where it's like, I think there are objective moral laws in the same way there's, like, objective ways to do math, but then, like, life is a landscape of just, like, different situations that, like, you're going to have to subjectively evaluate how to use those principles. Or like playing chess, where, like, there's only a certain limited number of moves you can play in chess, but then, like, you have to evaluate the situation, and it's a little bit more subjective to know what's the best move or strategy at this point in time. So I don't know. That's the way I look at it, at least.
Maybe it's just
we went to a funeral this morning for a friend. It was a Lutheran funeral, which, you know, I mean, it's kind of like halfway between Catholic and evangelical free church or whatever. But after, like, as we were leaving, my partner, and I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, but my partner told me, like, you know, with whatever influence you have over my very non-influenceable family, if you should happen to still be in my life when I die, I don't want a priest at my funeral. And I'm the exact opposite. Like, I don't necessarily want like the massive Christian burial, but I certainly want a priest to like MC the thing, just because it feels right to me. And neither one of us is hostile towards faith or the church or anything like that. So you know, I mean, I don't really know why I'm telling that story, other than the fact, like, I want to illustrate like sort of my affection for the faith that I grew up in, and that it continues. Yeah, I'm sure I had something else to say, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, there's something there, and I'm actually having Carrie Baldwin on the show, I believe next week, to talk a little bit about the church, because I don't know, I feel like there's definitely something broken about Protestantism and the endless splintering that's happened since the Reformation, and the church has lost its way, like all, and it's just, to me, it's like, I mean, and you know, maybe, you know, Jose might agree, at least to a certain point, not from a religious perspective, but just like evaluating it from a more pragmatic utilitarian perspective, that I feel like a lot of what we need to see in our culture change to, you know, see more advances towards liberty needs to be the church stepping up and taking more of a role to fill the needs that people think they can only get from the state. Like, I think the church has to be that light and salt in the world, and do the great commission that Jesus told him to do, which is to go be fisher of men, and to, you know, serve the least of these. And I think part of why we have ended up where we're at is because the church hasn't lived up to its calling. So I don't know, something there to ponder on at the end, but we're getting close to way past than what I wanted to go, but
I want to
there's
riff
just so
off
many-
some James Head real quick. I had a good thought
Okay, go ahead.
before we end. And I had meant to bring it up earlier. You mentioned utilitarianism, and like that's kind of in a sense what egoism is. If you really think about it, it's like a rational way of evaluating everything to some extent. I think there's nothing wrong with utilitarianism. The problem is whenever people think of utilitarianism, they're thinking of shitty utilitarianism, because people will always use, say for example, Dave will always use the example of like, well, I'm a human being and I have so many organs, and if we're in a community and there's some people who need organs, like, why don't they just kill me and take my organs? And then, you know, like, it'll help that many people. But it's like, okay, but yeah, on like one order of like action, sure, that very basic level, you can be like, yeah, utilitarianism is stupid. But it's like, well, if you fully apply the logic of utilitarianism, like, what other possible effects of setting a precedent of we can just kill people and steal their organs does that set for a larger society?
It's like not looking at it. You have to look at it with a low time preference to be like, you know, like, what's going to happen, the long-term ramifications there. I think the beautiful thing about libertarianism is that it's a moral and a utilitarian philosophy, right? Like, if something's not utilitarian, like if it's really great in theory but it doesn't work, well, then it's kind of useless, and that's kind of like the egoist.
I actually think it's shitty theory too. Then if your theory doesn't work in practice, it's shit theory. Like, that's kind of the idea of theory, which is like common rhetoric I hear in the liberty movement as of late. Like, well, maybe we shouldn't be so principled, or maybe theory's dumb. It's like, well, you probably have shitty theory, or you need to rethink your principles. I don't know what to tell you, because if they're not working, then they inherently are bad theories or principles. So, like,
exactly. Yeah, I agree. Cool. All right. Jose first, then James. Guys, plug your shows and the stuff you're doing again. If you have any upcoming guests or something to plug to, do that.
No Way Jose is the name of my show. I'm on YouTube, on all the major podcatchers. I'm on Odyssey as well. I just got nuked off Twitter, but there's a cool guy you should go check out at 2020 No Way Jose. But yeah, that was really a bummer. I had almost 4,000 followers, which is like, you're starting to get in that sweet spot where like, oh, it's pretty cool. Like, I'm a mover and shaker to some extent, but now I'm back in like the 1,000 range and it sucks. But
knock back out of my level.
Yeah, I think next week, I don't know which ones will be dropping public. I just did a quick little like I did the Hawkeye Anarchy. I did a solo episode. It's only like 15 minutes, so I'm kind of use it as like an intro to my Anarchist Handbook episodes. I think I'm gonna do Plunkett with Top next week and record that. I'm gonna do a Dune stream soon. I know we were talking about getting James, but I wanted to hit strike it was hot, and I don't think you're gonna finish the audiobook in time.
Yeah.
But if you finish the audiobook before Thursday, then you can hop on that stream. So yeah, hey, Road to Providence. You said follow me back. I have a shitload of follows right now. So and the way it works on Twitter, people don't know. It's like you can't follow too many people back at once, or it'll make Twitter think something's up and it'll suspend me, it'll put me in timeout. So I can only follow up so many people back at a time, and I'm working on it. Shoot me a DM, and I promise I'll follow you back. I don't care.
I'll send you his info.
Yeah, I'm a follow back whore. I don't care. So, but yeah. I think that's all the plugs I got. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. So.
Cool. All right, James,
Great.
go ahead.
Yeah, so blackbirdpodcast.com or Blackbird with James Jenneman on all your favorite podcatchers. I think there's like 3 podcasts called Blackbird, so just look for my name. And then I've got a couple of projects coming up. I'm going to start doing web development. If you have a business or a podcast or anything that needs a website, hit me up. I'm also starting a business directory of liberty-oriented businesses because all the ones that we have suck. And then also I work for Renegade University, Thad Russell's big project. Black Friday is going to be a huge blowout. So be looking at renegadeuniversity.com. He's not paying me for this, so I probably shouldn't plug it too much. But there's like discounts galore along with packages and things like that for Black Friday. I think it starts on Thanksgiving at midnight. So just go to renegadeuniversity.com for that. All kinds of courses and stuff. Cool. There you go.
All right. And then obviously Daniel 3 Biblical Anarchy. If you guys are watching this and you want to subscribe, that'd be cool. Next week, 23rd, I have Carrie Baldwin coming back on the show. We're going to talk about the church and also kind of like abuse in the church, like relationships, and then like the church moving forward, trying to reform it. Or maybe unreform it is the right word. I don't know. We need the anti-reformation, I guess. And then the 30th, I have Andrew from Popular Liberty coming on, and I don't know. I kind of have a plan for that conversation, but with Andrew, sometimes I feel like, you can try to control the conversation, but it'll just go a different direction. But I don't know. That'll be a fun conversation too. And that's all I have coming up that I'm aware of. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Jose and James for coming back on. Love talking with you guys. Love your guys' show. Obviously, my people watching who subscribe to me, if you haven't subscribed to their shows yet, definitely do a lot of great content.
Go check out James.
Conversations, and yeah, definitely check out. James has had Tom Woods on, which that's I'm still jealous about that. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, that's it. Until next time, everybody. Don't fear the fire.
Bye.